Okay, well, what I'd like to do today is just take sort of 10 minutes, just sort of explaining some of the marine environmental monitoring stuff that we've been carrying out. It actually goes quite in hand with the session just before lunch, so if I'm repeating anything, then please excuse me. Okay, so Ramsey Sound is where we've installed our Delta Stream device just before Christmas last year. The project was 50% trying to build a technology and 50% trying to build a site. So a lot of it is around technology development, but as importantly, and from an industry perspective, probably more importantly from an environmental perspective. The site is located to the north of Ramsey Sound. The cable is about 1.2 meters long, and from the mainland to the island is about 1.5 meters. So from the cliff tops on either side, we've got a really good view of what's happening with regard to the marine mammal movements particularly. We've been developing this site. It was first identified in 2004. Tidal Energy Limited started developing it properly in 2006, 2007. So it's taken ourselves a long time to get here. So we know this area quite well. And it's really nice to be able to understand the area so we can actually tell what's happening now the turbine is in the water. So from an environmental monitoring perspective, initially all the baseline surveys and such like are uncovered in the environmental impact assessment following from the scoping studies. But our marine license identifies a number of monitoring activities that need to be carried out, both pre-construction and also during operation as well. So we're able to tell between the baseline as to what the impacts are likely during operation. So those surveys are basically what we had to carry out was land-based marine mammal observations, land-based ornithology, land-based navigation, background underwater noise surveys. So we carried out 4 surveys during each season with regard to what the background noise is underwater. T-pods and hydrophones. So these are subsea listening devices, listening to harbour porpoise, listening to dolphins underwater. So we get an understanding for what's basically happening there. And then with regard to the benthic ecology, we're looking at seabed, video surveys, bathymetric surveys, side scans, sonars, and such like. The document on your right-hand side is the document that we prepared with our colleagues here from Marine Space, which is basically the agreed baseline monitoring package that this document has now been agreed with NRW. So as I said before, it might be a simple thing, but just being 1.5 kilometers from the shore, we're able to identify marine mammals swimming through the sound. The slide on the left-hand side shows basically the 3 observation points where our marine mammal observer was looking from. So basically carrying out surveys, 8 surveys a month. We really, over an 8-year period, I should add, we've really got a very good understanding of, during daylight hours, what marine mammals are doing within the sound. And more by luck than judgment, on the right-hand side, what we're finding out at slack tide, marine mammals are not within the vicinity of the turbine. So that's a really important bit of risk management that we need before we go into consenting. So then it's a case of, actually, how do you prove that when the turbine is operating? What are the long-term impacts? And again, during operation, we've got an operational monitoring requirement to compare the baseline with what's happening during operation. But also, most importantly, I think, from an industry perspective, which was mentioned this morning, collision monitoring. And what are the risks? Nobody believes that a marine mammal is going to swim straight into a turbine, but in a European protected site, in a special area of conservation, with European protected species, as a responsible developer, we have to basically prove that that's not going to happen. So again, repeating, land-based marine mammal monitoring, land-based ornithology. Even diving birds do go down. I think the gannet has been recorded to go down depths of about 200 meters. Underwater noise survey monitoring, wake monitoring, understand how much energy has been taken out of the flow while the turbine's operating. But then really interesting from a collision monitoring point of view, passive acoustic monitoring systems, which I'll talk about in a minute. Active acoustic monitoring system, so basically having a tactical display of any objects, including marine mammals and logs and such like in the vicinity of the rotor, and then accelerometers in the blades and strain gauges in the blades. So if an object has come within close proximity to the rotor, has there been a strike? By looking closely at accelerometers, looking closely at strain gauges, we're really hoping that we're going to be able to identify whether there's been a collision or not been a collision. The document on the right-hand side is basically our operation monitoring and collision monitoring and adaptive management plan. So it's being one of the first deploy monitor projects in Wales. It's all about being able to make sure you can adapt your operational monitoring, or how you operate the turbine during operation. Should you think there's been a collision, how can you reduce the risk so that there's not another collision? And again, this is a very live document, so it's version 10 of the document, and it's actually, this document has been revised even when we go through our operational period to reduce any risk of potential collision. So looking at the passive acoustic monitoring system, so these are hydrophones subsea, that they're continually listening for clicks from harbour porpoise, from dolphin whistles and such like. As Carol suggested before, on the top of the turbine, we've got 4 sets of 3 hydrophones. So the fact that they're spread out across the surface, we're able to carry out 2 or 3D tracking of harbour porpoise travelling throughout the whole sound, which is a fantastic bit of technology. We had 12 hydrophones. Unfortunately, during operation, we damaged about 5 of them, so we've got 7 left. So we've still got enough information coming back to be able to tell us what's happening. And what we're finding is really useful. 80% of porpoise recorded during hours of darkness. Does that mean that the 8 years of marine mammal monitoring from the cliff top was wasted? No, it doesn't, but it actually really goes forward to show that there's similarities between what's happening below the water and on top of the water. So effectively, what we're doing there is trying to compare that to the T-pod data. I mentioned before the fact we put T-pods on the seabed before we deployed. With 365 days of T-pod deployments and only 84 days of useful data. But just now we're operating this system, we're able to say that that data was good. But we're going a long way to proving that data. What's more important here is 97% of porpoise movements occurred when the flow speed around the turbine was less than 1 meter a second. And the diagram, the line, horizontal line going across shows the flow speed of 1 meter a second. And I think there's only one observation above that line. So an immediate bit of adaptive operation is basically to reduce startup to 1 meter a second and to stop the turbine at 1 meter a second. We're not gathering much energy during that period, but we're almost guaranteeing that there's not going to be a collision with a harbour porpoise. So we need to take that forward. So going from single turbines to arrays, how can we take this learning in the future going forward? Tidal Energy Limited, with our shareholders, Eco2 Limited, has basically got a 10 megawatt array site at St David's Head, which is about 2.5 kilometres north of Ramsey Sound. So we're really hoping that we're going to get similar observations with regard to marine mammals around the area, similar habits and such like. The interesting thing is that the site at St David's Head actually goes out about 4 kilometres. And this is only a minor point probably to the layperson, but does that mean that you can actually see harbour porpoise 4 kilometres away? How accurately can you do that? Luckily enough, well, by design, we've moved the turbines closer to the shore, about 1 kilometre from the shore itself. We've carried out 2 years' worth of marine mammal observations from the cliff top, and we're finding that some of the more sensitive animals are transiting St David's Head further than 1.5 kilometres, and seals are basically transiting very close to the shore. So we're ultimately finding that by having the turbines located closer to the shore, there's a reduced risk. Does that necessarily mean that we can see, for a long-term project, the Ramsey Sound project deploy monitor, 12 months in the water, we're looking here for a consent for 25 years. So we carrying out 2 years' worth of marine mammal data. Is that sufficient to be able to ask the regulator to make a decision on this consent? To have to put boats in the water costs about 5 times more than marine mammal monitoring. So you're edging the bets between 5 times more data for your money from the shore than a single amount basically from a boat. Hydrophone monitoring, we're understanding now how important that is because we've got the passive acoustic monitoring system. But when we put the hydrophones in, as I said, we had 84 days out of 365. If we had 365 days, then that would be a lot better. So we don't know what happened. Because it's fast-flowing water, was a hydrophone being smashed on the seabed during the tidal movements? Was it picking up shell fragments going past it? Was it picking up pebbles and such like? We just don't know. So these are the questions that need to be answered, I think, as we basically go forward. Most importantly, and it was mentioned this morning, did the marine mammals actually observe the turbine? Did they hear it? Did they see it? Did they feel the pressure waves from it? Was there any behavioural response? Was there any avoidance? Was there any evasive action to the actual operating turbine? Unfortunately, we don't know at the moment, but again, working with Carol from SMRU, we're going to be carrying out analysis now of all the passive acoustic monitoring system. So hopefully we can tell whether or not a marine mammal actually observed the turbine and took any avoidative action. And this is the raw data that we really need, as was discussed before, and I'm sure through ORGIP, this information will be very useful to them. Really important to get this baseline data understood so we can have evidence-based decisions for future long-term consenting projects. So that's me. Okay, thank you very much.